Hi everyone, my name is Stacy Bender and this is my documentation presentation. Hopefully you can see and hear me okay. There's probably a bit of a glare on my glasses I noticed in the test, so hopefully that's okay. If you have any problems with the file, please let me know and I will send you the presentation or just post it on the board. So the project that I worked on is for image right software documentation. The purpose of the software within our office specifically is document management and workflow. As I chose to document image right, I chose to use the HTML help workshop. So I used the tri-pane setup. For my audience, I identified three separate user groups. The first one is administrative assistants. Next is contract writers, and last, consultants. Are definitely the group that have the least amount to do with ImageWrite. Administrative assistants, they're doing more of the administrative tasks in this system. That could be filing correspondence, opening contracts to print them out, or uploading contracts. And the user group that uses this system the most, or the software the most, is the contract writers group. They're opening the contracts, updating language, tracking their changes, saving new versions, and they may also be helping people in the other groups. Um, every group is going to be required to use this. Again, contract writers, they're going to be using it the most. They're in about 4 hours a day on average. Consultants, they're just going to be opening, looking at it briefly, reading contracts, usually making sure it's what they want. And the administrative assistant group, they're probably going to be in it about 1 to 2 hours per day. For the most part, I would think that most of them prefer online help. However, consultants generally don't access the help systems. They prefer to go to either the contract writers or administrative assistants, or even in some cases, the IT department. And again, it's mandatory for everyone. With how familiar people are with ImageWrite, they don't have any experience using this software specifically. Consultants would have watched a demo. However, before receiving any type of documentation, they would be attending a training with one of the professionals in our office. And as far as other systems, most of them are going to be familiar with other systems, but they may not have worked in it extensively. There's another system that was used called Doc Management. Contract writers were heavily involved in that. Administrative assistants were usually involved in paper, so they may not have as much experience, and consultants used Doc Management and sites like SharePoint. My usability testing, the user's name is um, her group would be contract writers and probably assisting consultants. Overall goal for her would be opening the contracts, updating language, tracking changes, everything that the contract writers are going to be doing. For her, educational background was higher than what the general audience was. She has a master's degree. Amount of time she's going to be in the system about 4 to 5 hours per day. Prefers online help. It would be mandatory for her. And her familiarity is that she's gone into a pre-test environment. And I chose this user because she was familiar with the system, but not necessarily the task that she would need to be completing in order to go through my documentation. And again, she's also worked in the doc management system we had and SharePoint. I also included a form I had created to write, and maybe it's because I work in the legal department at my office. I did include a video permission form that I was going to be recording, whether that be just her voice or her actions or actually putting a camera on her. So that was a quick form that I had created, and I did have her sign that, so I have that completed. I think that's important to have when you're doing any type of usability testing that is with people outside of your normal workflow. And then I'm going to get into some of the revisions that I made. One of the first language changes that I made was changing user or applicable user to you. And this is just to try to create parallel structure like Barker says. And you can see the sample here that I moved from using the applicable user to check the box next to your name. And I included the screenshot just so you could see that I used accessing your to-do list and then your to-do list, but then in number 3, I was going back to saying applicable user. So just to make sure that was consistent, I went back through and changed anything to your name or your to-do list. I tried to follow more of a streamlined approach with brief steps, actions, action statements, and simple formatting like Farkas recommends. There was one set of instructions that the user had trouble with, and I've actually included part of the transcript on the screen. The red indicates where she was speaking, so if you can't read that on your PowerPoint screen at home, it says, so I assume I'm clicking my name. Okay, do I just uncheck the other names, right? Oh, so I'm unchecking all the names except mine. And this is where she got stuck. So it wasn't that clear what she should be doing because it still originally said applicable user. So she was confused if there was a different user or if she was doing this action for herself. So I changed the step to say check the box next to your name from the user drop-down menu. Note, to deselect all users, check all 2 times. So in some cases, the list is already going to have people selected. So I included a note just to make sure that if there were all users selected, the person completing the task would know that they need to deselect. Another revision that I made was in graphics. I cropped images using Snagit. You can see it before and after that I used. And this is just to create those clean, crisp images. It's definitely less cluttered. I could see how a user would look at this and see the red is distracting in the background. You can also see some blue highlight in the background. And it does distract from the graphic. And as Barker says, users can use the images to identify various parts of the procedure, so I really don't want to be distracting them with anything else. Another revision I made was the addition of captions to the more complex graphics. The graphic below was one that confused the user during testing. This was specifically confusing because she thought that she was supposed to be doing something within the box or clicking OK. She asked me if it was a screenshot. She didn't really understand where she was at. So in this example, you can see that in the top in step 3, I did refer in italics, which I kept consistent throughout, see figure 1 in parentheses. And then below the actual manual route pane, you can see figure 1, manual route pane. And I followed what Barker said about keeping any captions, any labels, short, concise, and just to make sure that they're really descriptive of what is in the image because it's going to confuse the user. I also added additional feedback for the user. I specifically used images to provide feedback and confirm what the user's actions were, as Pratt says in her article. His or her article, sorry. And this is just an example of one of the images that I used, and you can see here that the user is going to be able to tell their list of completed items, what it should look like. They can also see that the workflow, it should be contract certainty, the step, it should be market signature pages needed. They know that the date field needs to be turned in, signed in, and also who the user is. So this can help a user identify what they're going to be getting as a result. And if they don't have this result, then they need to go back and fix one of the steps. I also wanted to go over what I would do differently if I did this again. One of them was the to test the recording devices and or software at a greater length. I use Jing as my means of recording And it worked out very well to actually see everywhere the user was clicking. However, it timed out after 5 minutes. So that was a little bit troublesome when I had to interrupt the user to restart the recording again. I also had a backup. I recorded any action on my cell phone as well, just in case the audio didn't work. Luckily, the audio was successful in the Jing software. I would also like to, if I were to do this professionally, set up a testing environment that was a bit more similar to the user's workstation. At work, we work on multiple monitors, usually two, some people have three. During the testing, I was only on the laptop, so I could only supply my user with one laptop. She, of course, is used to working on two monitors as well. So I found that a little bit troublesome because normally I feel like the user would have the instructions displayed on one monitor while they were completing the tasks on the other. This would make it very easy for them to go back and forth. And I would also like to do more personalized tasks in the testing. We did have a test environment set up, but I no longer have access to that. But the test environment was great because you could set up individual tasks and have those assigned to the user. So it would be much more personal and much more realistic rather than having someone go into the live environment and actually releasing tasks that in the end I would have to go back and fix later because this was all being done live. And the other thing I would do is to do more testing after my revisions were made from both my usability tests and also from Dr. Thury. And that's just because Grayling recommends that when you make revisions, you need to also do the usability testing again to determine the effectiveness of those revisions. And actually, in the paper that I'm turning in, I mentioned that in an effort to make the document a bit more readable and also to slow the reader down a bit during their reading so they would focus on the language was to create white space in between the lines. And I did this and I thought it would be effective, but again, that's something that you would need to do usability testing for again to see if that really is the case. And I did specifically cite a section where a user had problems with it, so that's something that I would possibly want to test out again and see if that would be a more effective way to get the language out there correctly. That's my presentation. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them below and I will answer them. And I look forward to seeing all of your presentations as well. Thank you.